beautiful thing about doing government contracting is it's one and only business models I can say that truly has infinite potential. You put a number in your head, you can conceivably make that amount of money. Now, it might not happen in a year, but if you put a plan together, like there's no amount of money you can't write on a piece of paper that you couldn't possibly make in this industry if you really, really try. There's definitely a lot of work out there. There's more work than there is people to do the work if you look for the right type of work. I get more joy when I have my students win. It's dope because, you get somebody that's making $40,000, $50,000 a year at their normal job, and now they win a government contract and they're making 10, 15 grand. And they're like, I just made a quarter of my income for the entire year. And all I had to do was send some emails and do some paperwork. And I'm like, yeah, now imagine what you could make if you actually did this as a real job and it just wasn't a side job or a hobby.
All right, Kevin, thank you so much for joining the Construction Game podcast. Super excited to be here with you today, walking through. You're a government contractor. You do your own government contracts. You also help people in the government contracting space. And we were just talking, and you let me know you guys done over 400 transactions with the feds, and you've also done hundreds of millions of dollars with the feds. So super excited to walk through that with you. Can you give me a little bit of story on like how'd you got started doing this in this game?
Yeah, for sure. So I got started in government contracting in 2009. So I was in real estate development prior to that. And then when the market crashed in 07, 08, I lost essentially my real estate development company went down to nothing. And so I had to figure out another way to continue to generate revenue. So I had experience with government contracting because my father had been doing government contracting since the 80s. He was actually in he was like the initial wave of 8As. And so I had always knew what government contracting was. He did it for a different reason. So he was an aircraft mechanic. So he started an aircraft maintenance repair station in South Florida. And so that's what he was doing. And that's how he was using the government programs, was basically just to do work on military aircraft. So I had knowledge of what it was from his experiences. When real estate went down, I then started looking at other ways to get into to make money. And people had always been telling me, well, you just start doing stuff with the government. So what I did was I started doing minor construction projects for local agencies. And what I would do is I would use my subcontractor base from, flipping houses and building houses. And then I had them to start doing government work. So like my cabinet guy who would do my kitchens and bathrooms, he started doing partitions for us. He started doing doctor's office, reception areas, and so I was able to take my subcontractors that were going to be essentially out of work, and I was able to provide work for them. So in the beginning, that's really all I was doing, was just facilitating work for my subs and then making money off of it. And essentially, I was operating as a construction management firm. So that's how I started in 2009.
Excellent. Yeah, it's so funny that you were saying that your dad was in construction, because my dad was in construction as well. That's what got me my intro into contracting. And so your dad in the government was doing government projects for the feds, but you're saying he was more on the maintenance side versus construction side?
Yeah, so when he originally started, he was doing aircraft maintenance. And so he was repairing planes here locally in Miami, doing stuff for like the Coast Guard, at different Coast Guard stations, doing stuff at Homestead Air Force Base. That was his focus because he was a Navy mechanic. So his background was doing aircraft maintenance work for the Navy. Yeah. So he was working for Eastern Airlines at the time, and then he would like do stuff on the side, just like fixing people's planes on the side to like make a little side money. And then that's how he got introduced into the government work, because somebody asked him to work on a government plane because they knew that he had military experience. And then from there, he basically started his own business and started doing it like that as an actual business. He later got into construction in the mid 90s because there was a lot of, back then, that's when that original push for small and minority business was really big. And so people knew that he was in business, so then he started getting opportunities in the construction space. But originally, he was in the aircraft maintenance side.
Understood. Got it. Yeah. And then when you were also saying when you first got in, you got your first government project, and then you're bringing your subs that were doing your residential work into, doing government projects. Was there like a learning curve for them or for you to get them, access to these government projects now? Something got to do certified payrolls instead of just showing up to the job site.
Yeah, it was a massive learning curve. But it was a good time because government contracting back then in the early 2000s, it was a lot easier to do because it was still a personal approach. So the internet wasn't big. So like emailing and all that's not really like everything was still done like handshakes and word of mouth. So like you would go to a facility and like talk to a contracting officer. You can go to a facility and talk to small business directors, and you were able to like create relationships. So I was blessed in that I was able to create relationships with agencies, and a lot of the people at the agencies kind of took me under their wing and like showed me and took their time with us. Whereas nowadays that aspect is kind of gone. Like that doesn't exist anymore. So there was a bit of a learning curve, but I will say that the government did help a lot because they didn't have a lot of businesses running to do this work. So it sounds crazy, but at that time they needed us just as much as we needed them. So
Okay.
it wasn't that hard to learn, but it was a transition. But in comparison, hindsight, like we were making good money. So my subs, they weren't complaining because they were making more money than they were making doing houses. But then also at the time it was a recession, so they weren't making any money. So if they had to
Hmm.
do a little bit of paperwork to get a check, they were going to figure out how to do the paperwork because there was no
Yeah.
other money out there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's one of our claim to fame is like we're great at the paperwork, and we tell our subs like, yeah, you be good at what you're good at, and that's execution in the field, and let us be really good at what we're good at, and that's like getting the paperwork. And if you need a little bit of support here and there to get your paperwork in order, we'll be right there to help you. But we need your price. We need it today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, that's great. So so that's how you got into it, and then how did you start going after bigger projects? I was saying we were talking before. You were saying you guys are doing hundreds of millions of dollars in this government. Have done over hundreds of millions of dollars in this government space. How did you
Mm-hmm.
make that transition to the bigger projects, to doing more of the projects?
Yeah. So honestly, with us and our growth at that time, the timing was opportune. Like I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm super good at what I do. The timing was right. So it was at a time where the government was transitioning to doing more IDIQ contracts, and they were opening these IDIQ contracts up to total small businesses, as opposed to back previously, a lot of IDIQ contracts that would go to small businesses were strictly 8A set asides. So now we would see more opportunities as total small. We see more opportunities as hub zone. And so that's how we were able to actually grow is through IDIQ contracts. So what we did was we targeted agencies like VA, transportation, Coast Guard, and then we would get IDIQ contracts with the different regions. So we got IDIQ contracts with the VA in Visit 8. And so we covered North Florida, um, and South Georgia. We covered South Florida and the Caribbean. Then we got IDI contracts with Visit 11 in Indiana, Illinois, Michigan. And so that's how we were able to grow is through the IDIQ contracts. And so once we locked in with an agency and we saw that they had IDIQs, we just basically picked up IDIQs all over the nation with those agencies. And then that's what led to the growth.
Love it, love it, love it. And for those of you that don't know, IDIQ is an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, and they're like a contract vehicle. You get on the contract
Right.
vehicle, and you do this contract vehicle for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then they say there's a ceiling for it. There's $100 million ceiling, or there's $1 billion ceiling, and they're just the government's basically pushing all these contract opportunities to this IDIQ vehicle, and you might be on it with other contractors as well, right? Were the IDIQs that you're talking about, were you on it with other contractors or?
Yeah, so we at the time, like from 2014 to 2016, we were able to amass a total of I want to say 7 or 8 IDIQ contracts with not to exceeds of 100 million each.
Mhm,
Each one of those, depending on region, had anywhere between 3 to 7 contractors on it.
mhm.
But where it gets great is like when you have 7 of these contracts and they all have $100 million ceilings, and you'll start to see in certain regions is really the same people. So like in North Florida, so we had one set for North Florida, but then we had one set for South Florida, but it was the same contractors. So
Yeah.
it's really like 5 guys busting down 200 million across the entire state.
Yep.
And so that's what happens. And then everybody has different capacities. Everybody has different wheelhouses. So it's like certain projects, okay, he's probably going to do that because that's his wheelhouse. Or I know the electrician likes him better than me. So if it's an electrical heavy job, he's going to get that. But if it's a roofing type, I know this one's going to get that. If it's a interior remodel, I did a lot of interior remodels because I also had in-house drywall because I had my original construction company. So we were able to play it like that. And so, I mean, it was a great system. Well, like I said, we did that from, 2014. Our IDIQs ended, I think, like 2019, most of them. But I sold one of my companies in 2017, so I was out before we even, termed out.
Interesting. So was it valuable that you did have those IDIQs in your company for when the company that wanted to buy you? Was it
Of
valuable for
course,
them? Yeah,
because that's all they
yeah,
wanted. Because,
yeah.
see, a lot of times people, especially in our space and in minority communities, we don't understand the value of an exit, and we don't even understand how to exit and what an exit is.
Mhm.
And so basically we start going after work based on what we need for right now, and we don't plan for the future. So I didn't know it, but going after those IDIQs is what was able to position me for a exit. Because if something has $100 million ceiling, right, and you have so many of those, as a small business, you can only do so much work in a year before you are capped out as a small business, right? Like, we all love work, but all of us in business, there's only so much you can do before you max out your resources. Well, your resources are going to max out way before that contract's going to max out. So basically, someone will come in and they'll purchase your company because they have larger resources. So your resources might cap out at 30 million for the year, whereas their resources may cap out at 60 million. So they can really maximize that $100 million vehicle, whereas a smaller business, you can't. So that's what 110%, that's what gave me value on an exit, was because people saw the untapped potential of my contract vehicles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Love that. Love that. One other thing you mentioned was you were getting contracts in different areas. And honestly, that's been our claim to fame and I remember when I first got into this business back in 2012, I was going to these vendor outreach events and I ran into this guy and I was like, man, he's like, where do you work at? And I was like, man, I will go anywhere for my first contract. I don't care. Like, I would go to Hawaii, I'd go to California, I'll go anywhere. And then I ran into him a couple years later and he's like, man, where are you working? You're working in Georgia. You're working down in Florida. You're working up in DC, Maryland. You're working all over the place, right? And now where it's even crazier because we're working even in like Idaho and California and Texas and even Indiana. So yeah, that model has been huge for us. And I wanted to see how is that model? How have you been able to streamline that model? Because most people are scared of that, right? Most people are
Yeah,
scared of like, I can't work more than an hour or two from my house.
that's a that's a mindset, and a lot of people are stuck in a mindset. That's why they can't never scale and grow businesses to the potential anyway, because they have a limiting belief factor. The reality is, when you do business for the federal government, they do business the same way no matter where they do it. Like an SF90 is an SF90. A 1442 is a 1442. It doesn't matter what dollar figure is on it. It's the same 1442. So once you get over the fact of this has this zip code on it, this dollar figure, it's a 1442. Just sign it and send it back. So that's what it was for me. Like, it didn't matter for me where I was working, because once you get to a point where you're working on multiple jobs anyway, you're not going to be able to keep your finger on top of everything. So whether you have 10 jobs going on in your backyard, you're still not going to be able to get to all 10 jobs. So for me, it didn't matter. And like, now I have the philosophy where if I'm doing a job within the state of Florida, because the state of Florida is so big, and I have to drive to a job in Jacksonville, it's 5 hours away. If I have to fly to a job in Dallas, it's 3 hours away. So what's the difference? Right? So a lot of people get caught up in that, and it's a limiting belief factor. But it's also why I love government contracting, because those same people that limit their beliefs, that don't want to do that, that gives guys like us opportunity that don't care. Like, I commute literally every week to work. I own businesses in 3 different states. And Tuesday, Wednesday morning, I'm at the airport, I'm on a flight, and then I'm back home Friday night. So it's all the same to me.
Sir, yes, sir. Yeah, no, that's been a huge thing for us. I mean, being able to go to these different areas, even just keeping our pipeline full. Like, we just landed 3 projects in Maine. I grew up in Maine, right? We just landed 3 projects in Maine, just under $20 million. I haven't done work in Maine for almost a decade, but we kept our pipeline and kept our eyes and open for the different opportunities. There's a couple opportunities that popped up there at the National Park Service up there in Acadia, and we went after them. And we ended up getting them. And it's going to be a huge win for the organization once we get those things to the finish line. But, definitely not being, just DC specific, because honestly, we hit a IDIQ here in DC, and there's like 5 other contractors here. It's like $1 billion IDIQ, and it's over 7 years. So it's like almost $100 million each year gets spent on this thing. And for the first 2 years, this thing was hot. I mean, like every day felt like I was getting a new email for like, hey, go look at this project, go look at that project. This past year, crickets.
Mm-hmm.
And then when things started coming from it, they were like little small projects that, were going to be more hassle than they were even worth. Right. But like, keeping our eyes open and working in Maine and working in Texas and all these other markets, those areas were hot when DC was cold. And it kept us going. It kept us flowing. And sometimes I talk to other contractors, like, man, it's slow. I'm like, our workload is not slow right now.
Yeah, no.
Are you feeling the same thing?
Yeah, mine is not slow. But then, like I said, I'm in a different space right now just because of what I'm doing with the acquisitions. But there's definitely a lot of work out there. There's more work than there is people to do the work if you look for the right type of work. I think right now a lot of contractors are starting to really, really niche down. So they're trying to like stay specific on what they want to do, and they're not looking outside of their wheelhouse. And so that's freeing up a lot of opportunities in other places. But like I said, for me right now, I'm super focused on acquisitions. So it's really opened my eyes, and I'm looking at everything everywhere because I'm looking at the bigger picture with some of these companies.
Yeah. So walk me through the acquisitions. Like, what's your framework for your buy box? Like, hey, are you buying $100 million companies? Are you buying companies that are doing $1 million in revenue? Are you buying HVAC? Are you buying roofing? Like, what's your framework in your buy box for the things that you're looking at?
Yeah. So right now we're buying SMB, so small, medium market, small, middle market type stuff. So typically things under $7 million in revenue max. And what we're doing is we're doing strategic roll-ups in different sectors. So right now we're building out our construction sector. So we currently have an interior remodel and construction management firm that we own. I have an underground utility firm. We have a roofing company. And then tomorrow we close on a concrete pouring and cutting company. And so what we're doing is we're building out that construction vertical. And the reason for building out that construction vertical is to be able to go into a project and basically take on 70 to 80% of all the work within the project and keep it in house. And that will allow us to win more work and be more profitable. The only trades that we don't have yet is we don't have any MEPs as of yet. I'm working a deal on an electrical company now, and then hopefully a mechanical company in the future after that. And then once that's done, that'll be that. And then from there, we'll go on to the next vertical, which will be our facilities management vertical. So we'll pick up landscaping, pest control, janitorial companies, do a roll up on that. And then probably the last vertical we'll build out before we go to exit will be a professional services vertical.
Excellent. Awesome. Yeah, buying businesses is an interesting space. So one of the things that I found is that oftentimes they don't have a lot of systems. So like when you buy it, now all of a sudden their mess becomes your mess, right? So like, what's your philosophy for like buying these and taking them over and like, strategically not taking on a headache,
So that's the big problem. Not gonna lie to you. So the biggest problem with buying businesses is systems. Like a lot of these business owners, that's why they struggle in scaling, is because they don't have systems. And so that's what's typically holding them back from getting to that next level. Right now, with the silver tsunami that's taking place, you have a lot of the baby boomers that are retiring. And the baby boomers, for the lack of a better term, they just don't understand systems. Like these are guys that are in their 60s or 70s. They've been running these businesses the same way since literally the 1980s, right? So they've been running it off, before Excel spreadsheets. Like they were literally running stuff in journal books, and then they graduated to Excel when computers came out. So these are guys that don't understand massive systems. So that is one of the biggest downfalls. But on the flip side, these are legacy contractors that have been doing work with agencies for longer than, we've been alive. So there is intrinsic value in the company. So what we do is we take our systems and we basically bring our systems to the companies. And that's what we do. And that's what took me the longest in this acquisition piece. So I spent 18 months building out my management company before I ever acquired a business. I poured literally hundreds of thousands of dollars and thousands of hours of work into building out a management company that had the systems, the processes and procedures in place to take a company and just basically plug it in, and it does everything. And so now with that built, every time we acquire a company, we just plug it into our system. And so it doesn't matter. That's what makes it easier to, go all over the country to do all different types of work. Because like I said, a SF90 is a SF90. And so once you have the process in place of how you properly fill out SF90, how you decipher a RFQ versus an RFP versus an IFB, how you respond to source of salts. Once you have process in place for how you do all of this, it doesn't matter where you do it or who you do it with.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So one other thing that I was noticing, so are you buying companies that only have done, or that only are doing government work, or they're, okay, got it. Okay. So these are, this concrete coring company only does concrete coring for the government.
So the concrete coring company is a little bit different in that it does stuff outside of the government, but what it does is it has the clearances, it has the security level stuff in its employees to be able to get into government facilities because of working there prior. With the concrete coring company, it is a service provider for mostly MEP contractors, because that's who uses concrete coring mostly, is your plumbers, electricians. When they need to go through walls, they need penetration. If you got to run new plumbing in the VA hospital, you got to cut the slab. So primarily they work for MEP guys, and those MEP guys are your large government contractors. So they become a service provider for them. So with that company, what we're going to focus on is, clean room, ACA and ICRA stuff to be able to do stuff in the VA hospital, right? So being able to do stuff in data centers, and you do it dust free. So you don't have to worry about things you're breaking down. So we're going to become a specialized service provider. And then that is what's going to keep us in things, because that's not a company that typically will get a lot of prime contracting work unless we get into the form in place type stuff.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And honestly, like I started off in the civil game, and I had to basically recreate myself to even be able to get government contracts, because a lot of government contracts were not civil they definitely have some, but they're not as much as the things that we do now. Right. And we had to create ourselves into being a general contractor that can do renovation work, that could do civil work, that could also do mechanical work and electrical, plumbing and roofing and all these other things that it wasn't, we weren't the ones doing all of the work. We'd hire great subcontractors that had the expertise to do the work, but we at least knew how to run the job and to execute on the job, so we didn't get fleeced or getting taken advantage of. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What type of civil work did you start doing?
So we started off in Florida. I was living down in Tampa. My dad was down there, and I just graduated from college, and my dad was going out of business, and he was like, "Son, we have the same name. I need to put a company in your name." And I was like, "All right, like you still got my sisters that I need you to help take care of. Like, I'll put it in my name." I didn't really understand the risk I was taking on like that. And in the beginning, it was small stuff. We were doing like little $20,000 jobs for like Bank of America and all this stuff. And I, put the equipment rental on my credit card. I put the pay, we'd get paid, and I'd, instead of paying my credit card back, we'd make payroll, and, like all the little small things like that. Right. And then we started going after some of these bigger projects. Like we hit $1 million or $2 million project for a big, large GC that was doing work for the federal Department of Florida Department of Transportation. It was like a FDOT project, and it was basically connecting Tampa to Orlando, the I-4 connector. And we were doing Yeah, we were doing the underground pipe work under that. So we were installing like the 24-inch, 48-inch, 72-inch, the big,
Culverts.
huge
On
culverts
culverts.
underneath the
Yeah.
roadway. And then they were coming in and paving the roadway after. And man, we were getting our brains beat in big time. I was, they were, we were just, we were, putting tens of thousands of dollars out there every single week and
Oh yeah.
equipment and fuel and personnel. And we were wondering about when we were getting paid. And it was all my fault, right? Like I didn't review our contract, right? And now, I had to learn that stuff. I had to learn getting really good at contract review. Now I would never sign a contract unless I knew exactly when I was going to get paid, right? Retainage and all that stuff, just learning all that stuff was a huge learning curve. And I learned that stuff there. And I also started looking around and I was like, man, we're getting our brains beat in. We're not making money, but somebody is making money here.
No, somebody's definitely making money.
Someone's making money here.
No, somebody's
I was like,
definitely
man,
making
from
money.
here on out, I'm going to be the GC. I'm going to touch the money first. And then, but the cool thing about it is that now I know what it feels like to be that sub and to be trying to do. And we did good work. We did everything we said we were going to do. We did good work and we still were getting jerked around. So now when I get subs that do good work and they're there, they get paid very quickly. Sometimes we'll even pay them before we get paid. Right. But as soon as we get that payment in our account, we always ship that out because I just know what it's like to not, to need that money and to not have it.
Yeah. It's so funny. My first job that I ever did was a sewer connection, right? And I just took it because somebody just offered it to me and I just was trying to get off the ground. And I was like, yo, I'm never doing this type of work ever again. And then literally 10 years later, the company that I ended up selling was a sewer company. And I was deeply entrenched in the sewer business. Yeah. And that's just how it is. But I took the same thing. I started doing it and I was like, yo, I respect and I understand the craft. And then just like you, I was like, I know what I'm getting paid. I know what this entails. And then I started seeing how much money was actually going into civil work and underground utility work. And I was like, wait, there's money here. And then I started looking at the competition, wait, there's nobody doing this. Then I was like, okay, there's nobody that's black and brown doing it for sure. Okay, there's a lane for me here. And then I just went after it hard. And that's how I was able to sell my company was I took that approach and I was like, yo, I know there's money here. Let me just figure out how to maximize it.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Yeah. Now, any other breakthroughs that you had in the business along the way in 15 years being in government contracting? That
man, the whole thing's been an amazing journey. I think the biggest thing for me was being able to exit when I did because I learned so much from it. So not even the financial gain that I got from it, but just the learning that I was able to get from being able to exit was crazy. In addition to that, it gave me the knowledge to be able to do acquisitions, what I'm doing now. And I'm super excited about what we're doing now. It's really, it lights my fire every day to get up and just find new businesses, figure out how to get them to fit into the puzzle that we've created, to one day create this perfect picture that I know is possible and create this massive entity. Because as you know, the beautiful thing about doing government contracting is it's one and only business models I could say that truly has infinite potential. Whatever number you could, you put a number in your head, you can conceivably make that amount of money. Now, it might not happen in a year, but if you put a plan together, there's no amount of money you can't write on a piece of paper that you couldn't possibly make in this industry if you really, really tried. And so for me, that has been great. And one of the ways that I know I can get there is through the acquisition piece. So I'm just super excited about that. I love it. I talk about it every day with every person I can talk to because the way I'm using it now, very similar to how we talked about earlier with going to other cities and setting up and doing jobs. Now I just buy a company in the city that does that. So the same way you would have went to a city and, subcontracted the work out, I'll just buy a company in that city that does the work. And then now I make the money off of that job, but now I'm able to make more money. And now I'm able to go after more work. And now we're able to, cross-utilize services. Like my drywall company that I have in Amarillo, I'm looking at buying a jock contractor out of Dallas. So I found a jock contractor. All they do is load up on jocks, and they have jocks with a bunch of different school districts all over the state of Texas, but they're a CM. So they have all of these school board jocks doing all of this interior remodel work on schools, but all they do is make their construction management fee. Well, I got a drywall company that does interior remodel. So now I put the two companies together. Now, not only are we making that 7% fee, but we're also making 20 or 30% profit on all the drywall work. So I see it as a way to really it's almost like playing Monopoly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that because, and you're 100% right. I mean, in the beginning, we were doing like $10 million and then we set the goal to do $100 million. But when I go and look at my P&L, right, my profit and loss statement, I'm like, what's the biggest line item in that profit and loss statement? And it's like what we pay to our subcontractors. So I started telling the team, once we hit 40 million and we're going on to now hit 80 million this year, it's like, how can we start self-performing this stuff? Because the moment we start self-performing this stuff, this allows for extra profit to then fall to the bottom line that then we can utilize to incentivize the team. So we can now all make more money together. Yep. So it's like, how do we figure that out? So yeah, no, I love that model because, and it works. It works. It definitely works. Yeah, no. But at the same time, you got to execute, right? You got to execute. And when you self-perform things, now you own the warranty. You can't just call your subcontractor and say, hey, get back out here and do this.
There are pluses and minuses to doing it. That's another reason why we've been, I don't want to say hesitant because hesitant makes it sound scary, but that's why we haven't been as fast to jump into MEPs, is because the minute you start jumping into your MEPs, now that's where a lot of your heavy warranty work is going to come from when you start having issues, And so that's why we haven't jumped head forward into MEPs. If we're doing things like interior finishes, like once you paint a wall, nobody's really going to call you, come back, repaint the wall. Like if somebody bumps into it, you'd be like, hey, bro, they bumped into it. What do you want me to do? It's not because I didn't paint it good. Yeah. But now on the flip side, if you install a toilet fixture and your guy doesn't tighten it like he's supposed to, now it leaks. Okay, now you got to come back and fix that toilet fixture. Yeah. So it's a little bit, you know what I'm saying? You got to play that risk versus reward thing in your head when you start to look at acquisition and rolling these businesses up.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. That's 100% true on that. 100%. 100%. Yeah. So, what's the story behind Government Cheese?
So all right. I'll give you the whole story. I'm gonna give you the from top to bottom the whole truth behind it. Right. Yeah. All right. So I sold my business in 2017. 2019, I stopped working for the private equity firm that had acquired my business. COVID hit in 2020, right? When COVID hit in 2020, I ended up having to restart my business because the private equity firm didn't continue operations post-COVID. And you know how it is, like when you do government contracting, like our customers do business with us. Like they're calling us, you know what I'm saying? Like if something happens, they're calling you. They may, call the people, but at the end of the day, you're their contact. They know you. And so essentially that started happening when the private equity firm wasn't picking up the phone. So I ended up restarting my business. So I had vowed I didn't want to do the business anymore after I sold because I'm like, I checked it off. I built it, sold it, move on to the next thing. But then I got back into it. So did that 2020, 2021. 2021, I turned 40 years old and I'm like, bro, I'm still in a sewer. So like, I thought that when I sold my business and I made all these millions of dollars, I would never have to go back in a sewer. And now I look up and I'm spending my 40th birthday at a Holiday Inn with 6 sewer workers, right? And I'm like, this ain't what I had planned for myself when I thought I was going to become a millionaire. This wasn't in the bingo card. So I was like, yo, I got to do something. Like, what it's got to be something past this point. You know what I'm saying? So, I start asking God, just like, show me something else. So that was 2021. So 2022, it was so funny. I was actually doing a podcast similar to this. And I've always been the type that I've always mentored and helped people throughout like my career. Like if a younger brother comes to me, he's like, hey man, I'm trying to start my own construction business. All right, bro, let me show you how to do it. Here's what I do. Here's my forms that I use. Here's how you bid. That's just who I am. And so that I was doing that for a young brother in Tampa. Matter of fact, it's funny you say Tampa, where you got your start. And he was actually prior service, and was working at McDeal, and he was trying to start his own government contracting business. So I was mentoring him on how to do it, and he had a podcast. So he was like, "Man, I want you to come on a podcast and tell people how you've been helping me." So I'm like, "All right, whatever, bro." So I go do the podcast, and while I'm on the podcast, one of the other hosts, he was a digital marketer, and he said, "Hey, man, like this is dope. Like I've never seen anybody online talk about government contracting the way you do it. Like you should really like start teaching it." So I'm like, I don't know what that is. I didn't even have Instagram at the time. That's why people laugh. But like, if you go on the Government Cheese Instagram page, you'll see it literally started in May of 2023. Like that's when I got on Instagram. I wasn't on Instagram prior to that because, as you know, we're government contractors.
Yeah,
my client's not on the internet.
Yeah, you don't even need a website. you don't need nothing.
People don't understand this because they're so used to the way normal business works.
Yeah.
So, but you get it. So that's what it was. So then I said, "Hey, bro, look, I don't have any of that social stuff. But if you help me create a course and you really think that it can help people, I'll do it." So that's what happened. He created the course and we launched it. So then he's like, "Man, we need a name. We need a name." And so he was like, "We're going to call it Government Cheese. We're getting that cheese from the government." And I'm like, that's corny. Like, that's the corniest thing I've ever heard. Like, literally, the first logo was like a block of government cheese. And I'm like, that is the corniest thing ever. But then I sat with it, and I'll explain to you why it stuck. So I started my business in April of 2009. When I started my business in April 2009, remember I told you I went broke in 2007, 2008. So I was I was done. I had nothing, like literally nowhere to live, no car, no nothing. I was dead broke. And so I was actually on government assistance when I started my first business. My daughter was born in November of 2010. And even though I had just started my business and I was making money with government contracting, I was still broke. So I was on government assistance when I had my daughter. So then I started thinking about my journey in government contracting. And I was like, nah, you know what? Let's keep the name. And he was like, "Wow." I was like, because it's symbolic to me because when I started my journey in government contracting, I was on government cheese. And now it's what you think of it as is getting cheese from the government. And so that's why the name stuck and I just roll with it. And so when people ask, I tell them the story. I'm like, "Yo, this is when I started, I was on government cheese and now I'm not." And so it took me from that to this. And so that's how the name is. And that's why it's there. And, like I said, I just kept it and rolled with it. And people think it's funny. And it is. It's catchy. Like, it's annoying when I go out in public and be like, "Yo, government cheese." Like that's a little.
In a nice restaurant, government cheese.
Yeah, man. Outside of that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. That's awesome. Yeah, no, the government game is a great game, and it had a huge impact on my life. So I love when you're saying you're helping people get into the game, because there's not this. You can go and Google some of this stuff, but or you can even go and use some of the SBA resources. But what I found is that the people that are actually doing this game and winning in this game, those are the people that give you the real insights on how to actually get your own projects and tell you to keep going when everybody else is telling you to stop or pull back. Because that moment of keep going and keep following up and keep submitting bids, it's that's the moment that when you actually win it, and then you start to oh, this is how it all works. And then you're just man, it's just a light bulb just goes off in your head,
Man, when you're able to do it and it starts to work, it's amazing. And for me, when I started doing it and it started working, I was like, man, this is cool. And then now when I teach people and I'm able to help somebody get their first contract, it's almost I'm more excited, bro, now when I help somebody else get their first contract than I could hit an award. The fiscal year just ended, right? So we all getting awards. If you've been in the game, September 30th, you're going to get awards. And even this week, awards are still coming in, right? Yeah. That's just, after you do this game for a long time, that's what it is. So it don't even move you no more. But then for some of these people that have just been in the game and just learned, and they're like, "Yo, I actually won." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I told you that." You just thought I was just doing it to my help. And they're like, "Nah, this is amazing." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Now keep that going. Take that momentum and keep going." You know what I'm saying? And so for me, I get more joy when I have my students win. Cause it's dope. Cause you get somebody that's making $40,000-$50,000 a year at their normal job, and now they win a government contract and they're making 10-15 grand just for, coordinating some stuff, doing some paperwork. And they're like, I just made a quarter of my income for the entire year. And all I had to do was send some emails and do some paperwork. And I'm like, yeah, now imagine what you could make if you actually did this as a real job and it just wasn't a side job or a hobby. And then that's what I love, is when the light bulb goes off and they're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. Because a lot of times what we do doesn't make sense to people because they've never seen anybody do it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They don't know anybody that they can say, or even sometimes what gets them is we throw around numbers, like we throw around like how much money we're making. And to them, it's like, yeah, whatever, bro. That, like, I know you. Ain't no way your company's doing $20 million this year. Like, you normal like me. And it's like, yeah, it doesn't make me any different because I make 20, 30, $40 million a year. Like, I go to work and I work 8-10 hours a day just like you. Yeah. And it's just that's my earning potential. So that's the joy that I get out of it now, is seeing people like that.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I relate to that with, like, when we were, doing when we first started, it was really just me, and we had another person that was running project management. He was like also my mentor. And then we had, a couple guys in the field that were like being the superintendents on site. And it was, we were doing really well. We were doing like, for me at that time, we were doing really well. Cause like the thing I always wanted to do in my entire life was to create a $10 million company. The reason why I wanted to do that is because when I was getting in a fight with my dad as a kid, he's like, man, you'll never be able to do what I've been able to do. And he had a $10 million company. So then I get there and it's like, man, this is it. Like, what? So I was kind of like unfulfilled and unsatisfied. And then it was like, the moment that I was like, man, I want to build this thing out. And we reset the target to go to $100 million in a single year. It was like, now all of a sudden I had to bring on team members and now show those team members how to win. It was just like a light bulb went off and a fire went off inside of me, because it was like, now I can see somebody else get the same level of success that I got, or the feeling that I got when I would win those initial projects. And it's just, it brought this like new level of like fulfillment. So I totally can relate to you when you say that. Seeing your students win, it's a huge fulfillment thing, because it is. It's like seeing people that didn't think they could do it come in and start doing it, and they got to put the work in, right? They got to put the time and the energy, effort, the blood, sweat, and tears into it. But once they get it, and then they see it, you can't unsee it, and it's just like, let's go, let's build something huge together.
Yeah, no, that's the best thing is having that and letting people see that, and them understanding it, and them really like seeing the potential, and them really being like, okay, this is real, and now what I'm doing, even with the acquisitions, like I'm showing people and taking people on this journey. So I have a program where I allow mentees to essentially become my business partner in acquisitions. And so now taking them through this journey to where they're like, oh yeah, I heard about that, but I can't buy a business. So I'm like, all right, cool. You can do it with me. You can be a part of this. And you see me doing it. You see this, how we do transitions and how we, do all this stuff. And then once you feel comfortable, now you go do it for yourself, and I'm loving everything about that, because I feel like if we can't show people things and teach them something, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't do us any good for us to just do it by ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Because you're going to get to a point where you can do so much more and it's not going to change your life. I was just talking to one of my students now, and I'm like, you're going to get to a point where you make money. It's a certain number that everyone has, that once you hit that number, no matter how much more you make, your life's not going to change. You know what I'm saying? Like, now when you first get money, yeah, every dollar is like new. But once you've been doing this, like you've been doing it 10 years plus, there's only so much money you can make in a year before your life doesn't change. Your life stays the same. So it's just getting everybody to that point. Like, I yearn for everybody to see that and feel that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How do people get in contact with you?
Oh man, naturally, on YouTube, Government Cheese, Instagram, TikTok, Government Cheese. You can also shoot me an email. The email is hello@thegovernmentcheese.org. reach out. I love doing calls with people. I love talking to people, showing people. And that's what I do. I got out of the phase of like, I hate to say charge information, but like selling courses and doing that because, you know, it's just not worth it. So now I offer my time when I can to individuals, help them when I can. People that need the help, I'm here, you know, and then go to YouTube, Instagram, get all the free information. I just employ everybody to go out there and just give government contracting a try. I know what it did for my life and I know how it changed me. So I know how I can change others' lives.
Love it. Love it. Appreciate it, bro.
All right, my brother. Appreciate you.
Cool.